Hi everyone, this is Christina Kasperzak, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's early childhood session of the OSEP Virtual Leadership Conference. I have with me today Megan Vinn, my colleague at the ECTA Center and the Daisy Center, and I also have two colleagues from Utah, Betsy Sutherland and Debbie Ballard. And so today's session, for our live session, we're going to really focus on some highlights from the Utah preschool experience related to those big topics that we covered in the videos. Their work related to inclusion, family engagement, and the implementation of the DEC recommended practices. And Betsy is the 619 coordinator in Utah, and Debbie Ballard is with the Jordan School District. The video sessions, I hope everybody had a chance to see our videos. If you haven't yet, I really want to encourage you to go take a look at them. We had a number of videos on high quality inclusion where Michael Uden started us off, and then we had also several other presenters, Sherry Britt Williams, Maggie Connolly, and Nancy Anderson, really talking about their perspectives on implementing high quality inclusion. We had Ruth Ryder talk about the family engagement policy, and Michelle Lewis talk a lot about how to really authentically engage families. And we had some great video on suspension expulsion where Rosemarie Allen and Donna Spiker talked about strategies and data related to suspension and expulsion. And then on the DEC recommended practices, the ECTA Center did share on the practices and some materials for supporting implementation of the recommended practices. So I encourage you to see those videos, and today we're really going to focus on our Utah colleagues talking about their experiences. Just a little bit about some format today. I want to make sure that you know you're in listen-only mode, so your primary participation is through the group chat, or you may also be asking presenter questions. There's two separate boxes. One's the group chat, and one's a place where you can ask the presenter questions that comes directly into the presenters. And we're going to have a couple of polls today, and we're going to encourage some chat around some of our main early childhood topics too. So we hope you'll engage in some of the polling and in some of the chat as well. So our first poll and chat question, our first poll is about, has the federal policy statement on inclusion inspired any new efforts in your state related to increasing the inclusion of infants, toddlers, and preschool children with disabilities in high-quality early childhood programs? And I think the poll is embedded. Here we go. So if you want to just answer yes or no about whether that new policy statement has inspired any new work or supported any new efforts in your state. So it looks like people are weighing in. I hope you can all see that. It looks like more than half are saying yes, that it really has inspired some new efforts. For those of you who are saying no, I hope it is at least supporting and giving some substantial support to the efforts that you're already doing in your state. I wonder if you want to chat a little in the chat box too. Those of you who said yes, if you want to share examples of efforts underway in your program, things you're excited about around inclusion. I think this is an opportunity where people could really share some exciting things that you're doing in your state with one another. Okay. At this point, here's the results, if everyone can see those results of the poll. About 66% said yes, so that's exciting. Glad to hear a lot of people are having some new efforts in your state. At this point, I would like to turn the call over to Debbie and Betsy to share a little bit about your work in Utah. Debbie and Betsy, are you there?
Yes, we are.
Terrific.
We're calling this building systems of support, and one of the ways that we're building those systems is through inclusive environments. We're trying to support families and children on being able to be a part of an inclusive environment. And yes, the policy statement has been very big in Utah to move forward inclusive environment. Our state superintendent wrote a letter as a result of this policy statement to the district superintendent, also stating his support and the State Office of Education support for inclusive environments for preschool. There's also just a desire to increase the preschool student access to inclusive environments. Through the research that we see and the policy statement, we just know that that's a good environment for children, and we do want to have that. And I think the districts are seeing that and have a desire to increase that. The work by individual districts, the way we're working towards that is increasing numbers of typical peers in district preschools. Almost every district has increased the number of typical peers in their preschools in one way or another through the last couple of years. And one of the ways they have done that is the availability of Title I preschools. Several of the districts have redistributed money from Title I into their preschool program and are now including students with disabilities in Title I preschool. Also, many of our high schools have early childhood programs in them, and some of the districts are looking at adding preschool students with disabilities to those high school programs. And a couple of the districts, especially the small rural districts, have enrolled students with disabilities in private preschools. If they only have a few students, I know one district may only have 3 or 4 preschool students with disabilities, and then they are choosing to enroll those students in private preschools. Next slide. So as a result of moving towards inclusive environments, where the Utah State Office of Education, Special Education Department, did provide a 2-day workshop on preschool inclusion. Barbara Smith came to Utah and facilitated this. And she used the book that she and Aaron Barton wrote, called the Preschool Inclusion Toolbox, to facilitate this. The book is kind of a how-to guide, and it really does walk district programs through a plan to increase their inclusive environment. We also purchased the books for the individual districts, excuse me, so that they could use those in their planning with for inclusion in their district. We also had follow-up webinars and LEA training sessions that we provided over the phone. We did some phone conferences. We've also provided a flyer, a graphic with funding, how to braid and blend funding sources for Title I and private providers and districts as well, special ed money as well.
Betsy, this is Christina. You're doing a great job. I just wanted to let you know a couple people are saying that it's a little hard to hear, so if there's any, I don't know if you can get any closer or speak any louder. If not, it may just be the connection, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, I'm as close as I can possibly get.
Okay, so. I thought I would just double check. Thank you.
Okay. And now Debbie Ballard is going to talk about the district's response to the preschool inclusion.
All right. In Jordan, as we attended the Preschool Inclusion Conference, it was exciting to get together with people in our district. So we were able to bring in our Title I director as well as our special education director into the conference, which made an opportunity for us to be able to problem solve together, think about ways we can include more inclusive environments into our preschool setting. So what we had discussed is the problem in Jordan School District is it's one of the largest school districts where our schools are overcrowded at this time, and so space is a real problem for us. We have about 14 preschool sites within our district, but to add more is really a difficult thing for us. But we have two Title I preschools in Jordan School District. So and we do have other Title I schools. However, there's no room in those schools to have a preschool. So we talked about different ways we could get Title I children into our preschool special ed classrooms as our inclusive peer models. We have talked about ways to put our special ed students in our high school preschools. If children already are in preschool settings, we talked about ways we could deliver services in those local preschool settings throughout our district. So we came to conclusion that many of our Title I students were going to have a meeting with our area superintendents and our Title I director and our CET, which is our high school administrators, to talk about ways that we can include special ed peers into those classrooms, and we're going to be doing that next week. We also are going to talk to our area administrators in the elementary schools to let them know that we are working really hard to find typical peers. In the last 3 years, we've increased our typical peer numbers by 80%. So we really are committed to making our preschool settings more inclusive. Like I said before, space is a problem, but we hope to meet with the administrators of our elementary schools to talk about ways we can find some of their children who are at risk in their buildings and find ways to bring them into our preschool settings as well. So we are well on our way, and it's exciting that the Preschool Inclusion Conference brought all those people together to start problem-solving ways in which we can improve our inclusive settings. Next slide, please.
Do we want to go into the polls, Debbie?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, terrific. So I'll open them on the next slide. You'll see we have 2 questions around the DEC recommended practices, and we wanted to ask people how familiar you are with the revised DEC recommended practices, and then if you're involved in any state or local planning about how to support implementation of the recommended practices. So it should be, I think, on the next slide. Here's a question about your familiarity with the revised DEC recommended practices. They were revised in 2014, and they are for early childhood. And I'm watching that people are responding. And I think I need to go to the next slide. Is that right, to show the results? Right. So we kind of have a mix. I hope everyone can see that. We have a mix. There are some people who are only a little or not at all, where there's lots and lots of people who look like they are somewhat or very familiar. I hope people will take an opportunity to go and look at the DEC recommended practices. In addition, there are lots of new resources being developed by the Early Childhood TA Center and others to help local and state implementation of the recommended practices. And I think we were hoping maybe this would be a good place also in the chat box. If you have any exciting work going on in your program related to the recommended practices, I know for Part C, many of you, your SIP work will relate to the recommended practices. But really, Bertha 5, lots and lots of things may be going on in your states that would be nice to share with one another. I really think as a field to be learning from one another and promoting the implementation of those practices. Debbie or Betsy, did you want to say anything about that before I go on to the next slide?
I think we're good at this point. You know, it was a big, for our program, when we took time to look at the DEC recommended practices, it really was an aha moment for our program. And we'll get into that later on in our presentation. But to actually look at those and make adjustments in your program based on those, things that we're all doing really well related to the DEC recommended practices, and things that we can improve to make sure or make certain that we have high quality programs. It really was interesting for my staff to see areas that we needed to improve on. So I do recommend that everyone take the time to look at those practices and reflect on your own programs and how you are doing in those areas.
Yeah, and I see in the chat box, Debbie, a lot of people are talking about things like including them in their training materials or crosswalking them with credentials or anyways, lots of really ideas that are good that people are doing, looking at those that are related to inclusion, the topic we were just talking about. And, you know, of course, the inclusion work is very much supported by the different recommended practices. All right, should I go to the next slide for you then, Debbie?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, whoops, I forgot we had one more poll. Just wondering if there's any state or local planning. Maybe we should just get folks to let us know, in addition to what you were writing in the chat box, what kinds, or just a number to see how many people have state or local planning going on around the recommended practices. And I'll just wait a second, share that with you. Looks like about half. I share this a little bit more on the no end, and so I'm hoping this might be an opportunity for those of you who answered no to be thinking about how could you encourage it, what might be going on, how do we look at the recommended practices and really start doing some planning around that. Just maybe an opportunity to be thinking about some important work you might want to do around that. Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Debbie and Betsy.
Okay, this is Betsy. Yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about the support that we have gotten from the ECTA Center for reaching potential through the recommended practices, known around our state as RP2. We do have a state leadership team that is kind of overseeing this project. We have, on that state leadership team, we have representatives from USOE, myself and one of the leadership from the special ed department. We have a local LEA, the IHEs, the colleges. We have a representative from Utah State University, a representative from the Office of Child Care, who will help take that information to both private providers and Head Start. Our professional development network, and our local YMCA that this year has started including students with disabilities in their preschool in one of our preschools in one of our districts. That state leadership team also developed the master plan for the implementation of the recommended practices. We are focusing on those related to engagement and inclusion, and engagement includes both student engagement in the classroom and family engagement. So we have both of those as priorities. This project does use implementation science as the basis for it, and we will have scale up and sustainability of the program, we hope, in the long term. And Debbie's going to talk about the local approach.
Betsy, before Debbie starts, it looks like there's a question about whether or not you have any representation from your Parent Training Information Center in that work on the leadership team or in that RP squared work.
We don't yet, but it is on our priority list to include a parent on the state leadership team. We've been talking about it, but it hasn't happened yet, but we will.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Betsy.
As a matter of fact, I think Debbie has a parent that she was recommending for us, excuse me, to be on that team.
Okay, for Jordan and how we are implementing the RP2, it has been an exciting opportunity for our district to be a part of this. Not only have I learned a ton, but our teachers are really excited about the training that they're receiving. Many of the ideas are not new, but they're a way for us to reflect on what we are doing. So it has been a process in Jordan School District this isn't something that just happens overnight for sure, but so over the last 3.5 years, we have been really just starting our program from scratch. We started with an evidence-based curriculum. We then moved to an online progress monitoring tool that was developed by 4 districts in the state of Utah. Our teachers then began looking at their data to make decisions based on that data on the way they're teaching, the progress children are making, maybe where we are needing to show improvement in our program. Then we were looking, our next step was engagement, and that's where this RP2 has really come into play for our teachers. I feel like we're finally in a place where we really are getting all the pieces together, and as I go around and observe our teachers, it's really an exciting time to watch them implement the Utah Early Core Standards, using their curriculum, looking at their data to determine strengths and needs for our program. A couple of the things that happened this year with the RP2 is that we hired an internal instructional coach that's funded by our district. And then we also have external coaches that are through our universities. We have 2 of those that come to our team meetings and participate. They help our internal coach if she has any questions regarding practices or scale up within our program. They look at data together. They make decisions based on that data. Our external coaches put together a paraprofessional training for us in regards to the RP2 DEC recommended practices. We have very committed administrators and teachers. We have had the opportunity of having 4 trainings for our teachers, 4 full-day trainings, as well 2 additional trainings for our team leaders within our program in regards to the DEC recommended practices and the evidence that has been brought forth through the RP2 project. It has been a new way to look at things. It gives us an opportunity to really make a more focused attempt in looking at our teachers and the way they're teaching and the practices they're putting into place. So it's not an easy process. It is a lot of work for everyone involved, our teachers, our administrators, our district administrators. It really has really changed the focus of how we are working with preschoolers in our district.
Next slide, please. As I said before, this is the focus of our the DEC recommended practices. There's a lot of them, so our focus has been on engagement, and both student engagement and family engagement. Debbie's going to talk about how that looks in the school district on the teacher and student and parent level.
All right. So when we had the opportunity early on this year in looking at our implementation of DEC recommended practices, part of the RP2 process was to develop an action plan related to the DEC recommended practices. And through that action plan, our teachers, our teacher leaders were able to pinpoint two very important things in our program that they felt we needed assistance on or improvement in. So those two were parent engagement was our number one thing that or family engagement was where our teachers felt like they needed the most work related to their work within the classroom. We have done a great job at working with families, but going above and beyond and getting those families really engaged in what's happening in our classrooms and how we can help those children within their home. Usually at IEP meetings, parents ask, what can I do to help my child at home? We were giving them a couple of ideas and then sending them on their way. Since implementing RP2, we have done some really exciting things in our program. Some of our teachers chose to make weekly phone calls to their parents, and what they're doing is choosing 2 or 3 parents at the end of every day to give them phone calls to say, this is how your child's doing, this is where I think you can help at home. They're bringing parents in after IEP meetings for an hour to 45 minute to an hour session on ways to implement the IEP goals within their home. We have implemented a literacy night where we've brought area preschools. We've opened it up to preschools within the district as well as our special ed preschool programs, and we've had a literacy night where parents were brought in, children were given a book. We did various activities talking to parents about how to implement literacy in their home. We've had a writing night where the school was doing a night on writing, and so our preschool teachers at that particular school also had a writing night where they brought in parents and they talked about different ways and activities to strengthen handwriting and writing their name, and the children had drawn pictures of themselves. We've had carnival-like things where at Christmas time and at Halloween time we brought in parents and had little games that parents can do with their children. So we're really seeing an increase in the way our teachers are looking at family engagement. We also have a parent that we brought into our team that is helping us, that at the beginning began to help us with our belief statements, our vision statement, and in regards to the DEC recommended practices. And she was a real advocate for the work that we were doing. She's had 2 children in our program. So that was a really great start to bring her in. So we know that parent involvement is very critical, and we are doing that within our program. So that was one of the biggest areas that we could really make a difference on, we feel, this year. And then the next big thing is the student engagement and ways we know that just bringing typical peers into your classrooms or placing kids with disabilities in already established classrooms, it's not enough. You need to find ways to increase the peer-to-peer interactions. And so that is something that RP2 has really helped our teachers look at their teaching practices and ways for them to embed instruction, including our peers, getting our peers to interact together, having ways to incorporate higher level thinking into our program. And then the big thing that we are doing this year, and using our progress monitoring tool, we now have the opportunity to really dive deep into our data to help us with instruction. So something that our teachers are doing is that we look at the data, we find trends in our data, and one trend that we have found is that our preschool children are having a more difficult time with preschool math concepts. And so we know that that's something we need to beef up in our program. So our teachers in our PLC communities are looking at that data and taking that data and talking to each other about ways to incorporate that in large and small group instruction, ways that we can help parents incorporate that into their home. So we really feel like we are, we've still got a long way to go, but we feel like we have really taken the RP2 focus and put it deep within our program, and our teachers are really seeing improvements in the kids that they're working with. So that's how we have been adapting the DEC recommended practices and building supports within our program.
That's so great, Debbie. I was just looking, there's a couple questions. I don't know if you may feel like you've already answered this one a bit, but if you want to say any more about including parents in program decision making and sharing the ongoing progress data with parents for children. I don't know if those are things you want to address. Is that a question?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Christina. So our online progress monitoring tool is really an awesome tool. So what it does is it shows progress over time. So when we do it 3 times a year, and over that 3 times, so every time we have a parent-teacher conference or an IEP meeting or any type of meeting with a parent, it's color coordinated, so it shows parents where they were in the fall, where they are in winter, and where they are in the spring, and it colors it across as children make progress. And so our parents are able to look at the child's data and talk to the teacher at any time. We can email that information to parents as well if at any time they ask for the progress. So we really feel like we do have a good system where parents are able to see at any time along the course of their child's preschool, that preschool experience, that they are able to look at that progress and talk to the teacher about that. So I feel like we have a real good system there. And then as we've added our parent to our leadership team, she has been instrumental in helping us look at other ways. I really recommend people bringing in parents into their decision making. She really we had a mission statement already, but when she took a look at that, because we revisited that after our RP2 training, and we really changed the whole focus of our mission and vision and belief statements based on this parent's interaction with us as we re-looked at those. We made a complete change. It doesn't look anywhere near what it looked like before, and she was really instrumental in that, having us really take a look at a parent perspective in regards to those statements. And then our action plan. She was a part of that in helping us look at ways to involve parents more. She brings to the table her own preschool experience, having 2 children enrolled in our program, one being a child with more significant delays and one having more communication delays. So she really has a broad perspective of our program as well as the children we serve.
That's great, Debbie. I see there's quite a bit of interest of what tool. Are you using Teaching Strategies Gold or a different ongoing progress monitoring tool?
You know what? It's a different one. We'd like to use Gold, but really just didn't have the money to do that. So we got together with 4 districts along the Wasatch Front here and came up with our own. And it's been a long process. It took us about 4 years to put it together. But now our teachers have it on their iPads. It's just, they can just take the data as they go in groups and all kinds of ways that way. What we did to develop that is we brought out several evaluation tools and curriculum, and if it was consistent on every single tool that we brought out, then we added it to our evaluation tool. It corresponds very nicely with our Utah Early Childhood Standards, and so it's how we got our teachers to really begin looking at the early childhood standards here in Utah by having a tool that they had to report on 3 times a year. Really got them to focus on what they're doing. It really changed the way our teachers were looking at typical development. That was because the majority of our preschool programs in Jordan School District were for children with special needs. And so one thing that our teachers have learned is that, we needed to raise the bar on our expectations for our children by bringing in typical peers, but also monitoring their progress more frequently, and really knowing that our kids with disabilities can meet those high expectations. That was a big thing for our teachers to realize, is that, we're changing the way we do things and the expectations of our parents, our teachers, the children within our classrooms, and it really has made a huge difference.
Thanks, Debbie. I just want to do a couple things. One is just a time check. We have a little bit more than 5 minutes, so I just want to note that we have a number of other questions and comments. And there's one about Part C, and I just wanted to acknowledge our videos and our emphasis is birth to 5. We really have a strong passion for early childhood for the whole age range. We did, however, because of a short presentation time, invite just to have one state share today with Utah sharing. So I apologize if people feel like we're not spending enough on Part C, but I do think many of the principles and ideas around the recommended practice work and the inclusion work is birth to 5, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I wondered if we want to maybe go through the rest of your slides a little more quickly than we thought, Betsy and Debbie, and then we might try to check in and see if we can do 1 or 2 more questions that are in the chat box.
Okay, we can do that. And Christina, just to let people know that I also run an early intervention program, a Part C program. So for those of you who may want to ask me questions, send me an email or give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. We will be bringing this down to our Part C program and starting probably next year. It absolutely, all these DEC recommended practices and the RP2 type activities that we're doing really will go and transition way down to our birth to 3 population. And we didn't do that this time because it was just too much to undertake as far as that goes. But I do run that program too, so I would love to have the opportunity anytime to talk to people about how we might be going to do that in our program. So if we could go to the next slide, Christina. So I talked a little bit about this, but I'll kind of let you know another way that we are making sure that we're implementing the DEC recommended practices, that we have team meetings once a month, and many of you might think that that's not enough, but our teachers also have team meetings weekly within their program, but we bring everybody together once a month. And during that time, we have an RP2 meeting first with our team leaders, and we talk about the successes that people are seeing within their schools. We give out prizes based on new implementation strategies that might be taking place, or things that administration, as we go through classrooms, are noticing that teachers have really gone the extra mile on. We have looked at, then we break out into our PLC meetings where our individual teams are put together in groups of 3 or 4 different area schools, and they're able to look at their data and make decisions based on that data. They're talking about different teaching strategies, ways that they can improve in areas, things that they're doing really well at. So, for example, we've really pushed that if the majority of their children know their colors and shapes, why are we spending more time on that? Of course, we'll embed those into activities, but really we've talked about ways that we can focus on the children who already know what we're teaching and how we're going to improve there, and what we're going to do if children aren't getting what we're teaching. And that's really our main focus on how we're going to embed different kinds of activities to help meet the needs of all the children in their classrooms. Like I said before, we've hired a coach. Our coach has focused on 4 teachers specifically, and as part of the RP2 data type activities our coach is doing is that she goes in, takes data on our teachers. Each teacher has also picked a child to focus on that is difficult to engage, and we're implementing the activities that we're learning from the RP2 strategies for those children and getting more engagement from our difficult children, our children that are having more difficulty with engagement. So we are doing that, and then just focusing on research. So every team leader meeting, we have an article or something on engagement that we share with our staff. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Debbie. We really just have about 2 minutes, so if you want to just speak for a minute and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, the next slide is pretty self-explanatory. It just talks a little bit about the scale-up and sustainability statewide, the continued support of the State Office of Education for external coaching and professional development. And from the ECTA Center, we couldn't do this without the support from the ECTA Center. And the commitment of funds from the Utah State Office of Education, both the Special Ed Department and the Title I Department. So, next slide.
So that brings us
a couple of questions that we wanted to answer.
Honestly, I don't think we have time to do that, and I'm thinking what we might be able to do is check with our AIR colleagues who have hosted this to see if there could be some chat that happens in that discussion board after the session. There's been some great, there were many questions that came up during the session as well as prior that we've been trying to respond to. And with that, I think we should just say thank you so much. Thank you so much, Betsy and Debbie. You did a terrific job. Thank you so much to everybody who shared resources and ideas and content in the chat box. I'm so sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but we may try to do that in the chat afterwards. As I said, we'll check with our AIR colleagues to see if we can do that. And I know not just thanking you for joining today, but reminding you that the next session begins at 12:45, And there will be early childhood content embedded in that. That's a birth to 21 session around personnel. So I hope those of you who are interested in early childhood will come to that session and hear several colleagues talking about personnel development.
Yeah, and this is Mel Kuttner from AIR, and we'll pull all questions